Good day, all. Thank you so much for joining us. Our names are Crystal Reina and Monica Rivera. This presentation will be about motivation across cultures. We've constructed these slides for you in hopes of exploring how motivation can be used to understand and improve employee performance. We will also identify and describe internationally researched work motivation theories and much more. Lots of fun to dig into, so let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, our overall thought for this presentation is that with the increased business expansion and globalization, employers should embrace different motivation approaches to increase employee productivity and commitment. Whether that is through recognition, salary, or even other factors, we really should all work for employers who seek ways to find what drives us as individuals and, most importantly, as their employees. Our agenda for today will be as follows. First, we will explain the context of employee motivation and its principles. Next, we will dig deep into employee motivation theories and employee motivation theories in international context. Lastly, we will talk about the challenges of setting a motivational practice for the entire world. Employee motivation and its principles. Employee motivation refers to an approach that employers use to understand employee performance and boost it. In order to be successful, employee motivation should be tailored towards specific employee preferences. Notably, employee motivation strategies differ in different countries. What works best in the United States may not necessarily be what motivates employees in China. Therefore, employee motivation requires an examination of regional or state differences in motivational sources. General principles of employee motivation. Motivation mainly involves creating conditions and incentives that drive people towards offering maximum effort. Embracing flexible working conditions is a key way of motivating employees. Intrinsic rewards should not be underestimated as they play a key role in employee motivation. Therefore, employers should provide opportunities and responsibilities that allow employees to rise to a challenge. Employee motivation in the global workplace. Culture is a key consideration when it comes to global employee motivation. What is meaningful and rewarding varies from culture to culture. There are common characteristics in effective employee management across cultures. However, there are also a wide variety of differentiations across cultures, such as compensation and benefits. Employers that can effectively motivate employees across cultures are creating competitive advantages that are difficult for competitors to match. In this slide, we will watch a video where Nathan explores and shares the way that his Filipino culture, background, and heritage has influenced his personal and academic life.
By a show of hands, the Philippines before. That's what I thought. My mom moved from the Philippines 25 years ago to the United States for a better life. And long story short, she met my dad, and now I'm here. My talk is on how culture shapes motivation, culture being the senses, behaviors, attitudes, and traditions that exist within a large group of people that are changed from hand to hand as generations grow on. And motivation is a process that guides and maintains behaviors. So, the Philippines, I was 7 years old. See, a little bit younger self of mine, and I got to meet my extended family. So when I first walked off the plane, I was not only greeted by my family, I was actually attacked. They all ran up and hugged me, pinning me down to the tarmac floor, as you can imagine. 10 kids laying me down, like all hugging me at the same time. So when I first met everybody, they're the more traditional side of my family. They, as a cohesive group, respect each other a whole lot more than what I've seen in the United States. They eat dinner together every single night. They eat breakfast together every single morning. They spend more time together as a family than they do outside of the house. Why? The Philippines, as described by Church in a 1986 study, says that the culture of the Philippines, they focus more on the interrelationships between people rather than on themselves individually. So people are more likely to change their own behavior to fit the expectations of another person. And my family, being Filipinos, exhibit this quite well. When I went on my second trip to the Philippines, I stayed in the more Americanized section of Manila. So there were McDonald's in every Starbucks every block or so, and Pizza Hut it delivered. And what I realized in those areas where people were more Americanized, they spent more time outside of the house and they spent inside with their families. They rather focus on themselves and focus on them as a collective group, and it affected their motivation. And my favorite trip, where I actually got to see the whole country as a whole, was because I'm in a Filipino instrumental group called the Eskwelahang Filipino Randalyo of Boston. In 2013, we as a group performed a 30-song set around the country, doing about 21 shows in 20 days. And we performed for the president of the country. We performed for kids in churches, in big venues, small venues, from all around the country. And it was really eye-opening to see how people's cultures changed not only within a social group, but within a country. People in the North, where there's more Americanized influences, act differently than those in the South, where Americanization has not yet reached them. So, as you can see here, this is me with my instrument, where the guy's holding the guitar-like objects, and the students of CLSU University in the Philippines. And we were really privileged at this show to sit down and discuss the cultural differences between ourselves and our Filipino counterparts. And as we got talking, we realized that we weren't as different as we originally thought. We both like, as a group, we like to spend time on ourselves, we like to spend time with our family. The American students, we like to spend more time out of the house than inside the house. And the Filipino students said that they like to spend more time inside the house than outside the house. And as we got to talking more and more, we realized that it was our culture that shaped this. So now we move on to today. So studies show that Asian American immigrants from foreign countries are more motivated within the classroom than their white peers. Why? Because, as I said earlier, in the Asian culture, people are more likely to change their own behavior to fit other people's expectations. So students, they want to fulfill their parents' expectations of becoming better in school, doing better than their peers. So students stay home, they study more, they review on their exams, and they make sure that they want to appeal to their parents' expectations rather than going out, having fun, watching movies, etc. Also, studies show that Asian American students are more likely to listen to commands of their parents rather than commands of themselves. So if, let's say my mom says, Nathan, go clean the house, I am more likely to clean the house than me, Wii, or the Xbox. Reason being is that when parents move over here from the United States, to the United States, they bring their cultures with them. And in my case, and my mom, and so on and so forth. So, where am I going with this? So as I said, with my mom coming over from the Philippines, she brought everything with her, and it impacted me. I mean, today I'm up here talking, giving a TED Talk in formal Filipino regalia, talking about my heritage, and my mom actually motivated me. She was there while with all my notes. She's saying, put this story in there, talk about this, and we're talking back and forth, and it was really awe-inspiring to get her opinion on everything. So when we all come from unique areas, we all have our own things that make us who we are. It's our culture. It's what motivates us to go do good in school, do well in the workplace, what have you. So appreciate it, because it makes you you. Thank you.
The nature of motivation. Motivation is a psychological process through which unsatisfied wants or needs lead to drives that are aimed at goals or incentives. The three basic elements of the motivation process are needs, drives, and goal attainment. The determinant of motivation could be intrinsic, by which an individual experiences fulfillment through carrying out an activity itself and helping others, or it could be extrinsic, in the sense that the external environment and result of the activity in the form of competition and comparison or incentive plans are of greater importance. Universalist assumption. The first assumption is that the motivation is universal and that all people are motivated to pursue goals that they value. The process is universal, but motivation as a tool is influenced by other factors. One of these factors is culture. Culture influences the specific content and goals that are pursued. Due to cultural differences, incentives implemented to motivate employees differ. The content and process assumption. The second starting assumption is that the work motivation theories can be broken down into two general categories: content and process. The content theories explain work motivation in terms of what arouses, energizes, or initiates employee behavior. Process theories of work motivation explain how employee behavior is initiated, redirected, and halted. Most research international HR management business leaders has been content-oriented, as these theories examine motivation in more general terms versus process theories that are much more sophisticated, and they actually tend to focus on individual behavior. The hierarchy of needs theory. This theory is based primarily on work by Abraham Maslow and has received a great deal of attention in U.S. management. Maslow postulated that everyone has 5 basic needs that constitute a need hierarchy. In ascending order, beginning with the most basic need, these needs are physiological, safety, social, esteem, and self-actualization needs. Maslow's theory, international findings. People throughout the world have similar needs as those described by Maslow. And though there may be minor modifications to such needs, all of these needs are important to people across cultures. Such modifications call for the consideration of a country's profile in the modification of approaches to the same. This discussion so far indicates that even though the need hierarchy concept is culturally specific, it also offers a useful way to study and apply work motivation internationally across countries. Next, we're going to briefly discuss the two-factor motivation theory. This theory was formulated by Herzberg and his colleagues and is closely linked to the need hierarchy by Maslow. The two-factor theory motivation holds that 2 sets of factors influences job satisfaction. The first set is hygiene factors, and the second set are motivators. A few hygiene factors include salary, technical supervision, and working conditions. A few motivator factors include achievement, recognition, advancement, responsibility, and even the work itself. Herzberg's theory, international findings. International findings related to this theory fall into two categories. One consists of replications of Herzberg's research, and the other category are cross-cultural studies that focus on job satisfaction. Motivators are significant contributors of job satisfaction than dissatisfaction, and no motivator acts as a source of job dissatisfaction. However, the level of dissatisfaction derived from hygiene factors differs across cultures. The achievement theory holds that individuals can have a need to get ahead, to attain success, and to reach objectives. This theory has been more applied to the actual practice of management than others, and has been the focus of some interesting research. The last theory we will touch base on is the select process theory. These are theories that explain how employee behavior is initiated, redirected, or stopped. They include the goal-setting theory. This theory focuses on the criterion used by individuals in setting goals and addressing them and the overall influence of this process on motivation. Next is the equity theory. This theory focuses on how employees' perception on fairness of reward incentives affects their motivation. Next is the expectancy theory. This theory holds that motivation is significantly influenced by one's beliefs that effort leads to performance, performance leads to specific outcomes, and outcomes are valuable to an individual. In conclusion, in order for businesses to continue expanding their operations, they must be able to attract and retain highly qualified personnel through motivation. Some motivational practices have universal appeal, but more often than not, they need tailoring to fit the culture that they are in. The actual challenge lies in finding the appropriate applications of motivational theory to the specific culture at hand.